start off, I'm going to give you the second verse, second number, so you can mark that, make it easier to get to quicker. 509, 509, that'll be second song. And we'll begin with 456. 456. There's a journey here mid the toils and tears. There's a rainbow in the cloud. He will safely lead us down, no fear. There's a rainbow in the cloud. There's a rainbow that is shining. There's a rainbow in the cloud. When the faces run and the victories won. There's a rainbow in the cloud. When the way seems dark and the night grows long. There's a rainbow in the cloud. When my way grows near and no friend seems near. There's a rainbow in the cloud. There's a rainbow that is shining. There's a rainbow in the cloud. When our faces run and the victory won. There's a rainbow in the cloud. When the storms all pass, comes a brighter day. There's a rainbow in the cloud. In the city fair, there's a crown to wear. There's a rainbow in the cloud. There's a rainbow that is shining. There's a rainbow in the cloud. When those faces run and the victory won. There's a rainbow in the cloud. Okay, then 509. I will sing the wonder story of the Christ who died for me. How he left his home in glory on the cross of Calvary. Yes, I'll sing the wonder story of the Christ who died for me. Sing it with the saints in glory. Get their blood the crystal sea.
Genesis chapter 27. Well, we've been talking some about, and by the way, I should note that those of you at the second service where Michael became very emotional, he does love Josiah, but it wasn't just thinking about Josiah. It probably had a lot to do with his own daughter, their last daughter, last kid in the house going off to college. That hit him. But while we have a lot of college, age going, the Wolves just handed off their daughter in marriage yesterday. So best wishes to Tyler and Logan Ashweg in their new beginning there. So Genesis 37, as we're kind of continuing our study. 37, sorry. Genesis 37. We're working through the book of Genesis, and we forget how many incredible stories are recorded here. Genesis 37, verse 1. Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of the other sons, because he was a son of his old age, and he made him a robe of many colors. Now, I don't see anything that could go wrong with that family dynamic, do you? Anything in there, kind of red flag, this is potentially a problem? Yes. Yep. And there's good reason to have some jealousies. Dad's favorite, right? And then Joseph's coming back with bad reports on the brothers. So, yeah, it's just a mess waiting to happen here, isn't it? But we start off on the roller coaster of Joseph's life, kind of a high point, right? Things pretty good. House, Dad loves him, thinks a lot of him. Can you think of anybody else that had kind of favorites when it comes to parents that we've already talked about? Isaac. Who did Isaac favor? Yep, Esau, because he loved the wild game, and Rebekah, she favored Jacob. Why is sometimes favoritism easy to slide into when it comes to parents and children? There are certain kids that are just easier to deal with than others, aren't there? That's no doubt. Just a little, make life a little bit better. There's also, what are some other reasons that we might be more drawn to certain kids over others? Okay. All right. Oh, I see. Maybe some of them just seem to be more mature than others. Yeah. Karen? Yeah. So if they like to, like my father would just be hunting and fishing every moment if he had the chance. And that just was not something. I'd be out there sitting in the woods, and I'd be thinking of all the things I could be doing rather than sitting here in the woods. Now, I mean, there was something, it was not as appealing to me. And I told my dad, I said, Dad, I'm just sorry that really never connected with me. And he said to me, Steve, you just didn't have enough time with it. Because there's no other excuse. I thought, well, Dad, if we spent all of your vacation time hunting, muzzle load, rifle, bow. If there was a rock season, we've been hunting deer with rocks. I think I had a lot of hunting experience, but just couldn't fathom that. So, but there, if you have a kid that has similar interests and likes, and that makes it a lot easier. I think the hard thing to do is the one that has very different. Anybody, you have a kid that just seems very different interests than you have, that you kind of struggled with sharing those things with them? Anybody want to share one of those stories? Okay, you were big into sports and he was not so much. Yeah.
Her daughter did not enjoy doing handwork or cooking or anything like that. After she was grown, I get these calls, Mom, is it okay to put frozen chicken thighs into the oven?
Okay, so then later call you back. Things you'd hoped you could have taught her early in life, but she didn't maybe have the patience to know then. Yeah, so, you know, it's a lot easier. Greg, did you have something you were going to add? Yeah, kids that do better in school, that's a lot easier. It can be very frustrating with one that's struggling like that.
Two reasons in his particular case. One is certainly if you're the oldest and the youngest, there's a big difference, especially the age gap. A lot of people mellow out themselves, and I'm more like a grandparent to the very younger when you have that much of an age gap. In fact, my mother told my oldest sister that the first child is like waffles. She had to throw the first one away.
Okay, I see. All right.
So, and I think, you know, most people are harder,
Yeah.
younger, and have
Yeah.
more stresses when they're, you know.
That's probably true. And then younger ones, you know, they watch the problems going older, and I don't want to repeat that. So that's just often the relationship is a little easier, right?
The other that's very prevalent is you're talking about half brothers here, you know.
Yes.
And wives, and Rachel was the only wife he ever wanted.
Yeah.
So, you know, and it took a long time for her to have this one.
Yeah.
And so that obviously, especially if he is like
Yeah.
her, he really didn't ask for the rest of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a whole lot of complicating factors that lead to this perfect storm, but that's generally not going to work out well with blatant favoritism, right? There may be kids that, and I think we all have to be mindful of that, especially with a kid that's, I've got one that I just, I grew up a Dallas Cowboy fan. What can I say? You know, I grew up with it. I didn't have a choice, right? It was already there. And my oldest son kind of got into them, but my middle son, he went with the Giants, a division rival. I don't know what happened there. I mean, but that was not always easy to try to, let's sit around, I'll cheer for your team, and try to make you, but we do have to find, I think, we really need, if their thing is not my thing, finding something that they have an interest in and investing that. Because if you don't, then they're not going to have as much of interest in you later, right? So, but this dynamic is just, it's boiling with all these dynamics going on. And so, verse 4, when the brothers saw that their father loved him more than all the other brothers, how'd they feel about him? Hated him and could not speak. What does your version say? Could not? Kind word, peacefully, all these things to him. So, if that isn't enough, verse 5, now Joseph had a dream. He told to his brothers. They hated him even more. Here was a dream, he said. So there's two dreams. First dream, verse 7. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf rose and stood upright, and behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. And what do you think? How did they interpret his little dream? You expect we're all going to bow down to you. Oh, yes. I'm sure that was a very special moment for all of them. Their reaction, verse 8, are you indeed to reign over us? Are you going to rule over us? So they hated him even more for the dreams. But wait, I have another dream. Oh, let's hear it. Verse 9, he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, behold, I've dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars are bowing down to me. It just gets better. Now the divine beings and the heavenly realms are bowing down to me. Verse 10, guess what? He told that to his father and his brothers, and his father rebuked him. What is this dream you've dreamed? Shall I and your mother, by the way, his mother, Rachel, I think she's already died back in chapter 35. So this must be Leah. But he says, are we, I and your brother, to indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you? So, verse 11, his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind. Does that remind you of anything? Confusing, hurtful, but yet thinking, what could this mean in the future? Is this something that's going to be revealed in the future? Anybody have a parent, a similar thought? I'm thinking of Mary. Yeah, Luke 2:38, when he wasn't there and they can't find him, and find him there, and said that she treasured, kept that in her heart, thinking about that when he said, I'm in my Father's house. Could this mean something? What do y'all think? Do you think Joseph knew what these dreams were about? Well, I doubt he knew where it ultimately, couldn't fathom what it was ultimately going to mean. Which brings up a good point. Sometimes, did you ever have something with one of your kids that initially was rather frustrating, but later you'd find out ended up being a gift, something that would be a positive for them? Anybody share an example of that?
My daughter was very strong-willed and difficult with me, right? So apparently I needed that.
Well, I think you're not alone in that, because I know there's some others in here that had a kid that was very strong-willed and probably felt that they might be raising a demon there for a while, but then that kid, then that strong will turned into a determination, a drive, but not a negative, but a very positive when it was directed. And that's important to remember, that sometimes these things that are very frustrating to us, could end up being, a real strength, a positive, if it's directed and harnessed.
What I'm wrestling with is Joseph doesn't seem to read the room very well.
Joseph doesn't seem to read the room well. No, you'd think my brothers all love me. I'm just going to keep telling these stories about how I'm going to reign over them. We probably all know kids kind of like that you think, what do you know? I get it. You're not going to survive. You're going to get beaten up every day at school if you keep, but anyway. Yeah, there is something about him that is highly annoying to people and confusing to people, but later maybe they'll understand it a little bit better. So he goes out, and his father sends him to go check up on the brothers. Verse 14, go see if it is well with your brothers and with the flocks. Bring me word. So he takes off, he comes, and the brothers see him coming. What do they think? Well, he's just, why do they see he's coming? Well, he's just going to rat us out, right? He's just going to go. In fact, that's what Dad said. Go give me a report. And I'm sure Joseph was probably the kid that was going to go back and say, well, I hate to say something negative, but I have a list right here of what they were doing, not doing. I put special stars by the names of those that especially were behaving negatively. That's probably just what they could see coming. So what do? Well, the first idea is what? Just kill him. Yeah. There's lots of people joke about, they're ready to do it. There's not really, this is how bad it's gotten. Reuben steps in, says, hold on, guys. Let's not go that extreme here. I'm just kind of summarizing some things. I think we know a lot of the story, and so then ends up what happening. Let's throw him in the pit for now. His thought is, I'll come back later, get him out. But what happens? They sell him. Well, it's a win-win, Make a few bucks. Huh?
They say after all,
He is our brother. I mean, killing him would be the wrong thing. We get nothing out of that. So let's just sell him. All right. So then they need a reason of why he's not coming back. And so what do? Take that coat of many colors and add another color, goat's blood, and take it back to the dad and say, I don't know what happened, Dad. We just found this tore up jacket with blood all over it. Dad assumes wild animal took him out. And there's this moment of course, great grief. How does he respond to that news? Mourn for many days. Yeah. And just greatly distraught. And so, chapter 39, or there's 30. I guess we could talk about this lovely little story that every child's, the favorite storybook, flannel board story of Judah and the prostitute from Genesis 38. But, rather than just skipping the story, I think that there's probably some value. We should just take note of this account. Actually, I'm in Exodus. No wonder I couldn't find that one. There we go. So, like verse 6 of chapter 38, Judah took a wife for his firstborn. Her name was Tamar, but Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord put him to death. That's kind of short and sweet, to the point. Judah said to Onan, go into your brother's wife, perform the duty of the brother-in-law. So this is kind of the whole Levirate law that the husband dies and the brother is to have children with her. That would be then carry on the descent of the dead brother. But he knew it wouldn't be his, and he didn't do it. He wasn't going to get her pregnant. So finally, Judah just told her, verse 11, just remain a widow in your father's house till Selah my son grows up, for he feared that he would die like his brothers. So Tamar went and remained in her father's house. He treats her like why did her husband die? Judah's son. He's wicked, and yet he's treating like this is her fault. And you're just going to have to stay a widow till things, when he knew there was no plan ever for that to change. He was not going to. So she's waiting and waiting, and then so his wife dies, Judah's does, and he's going along here, and he meets this woman he believes to be a prostitute, and she asks, what are you going to give me? Payment, like verse 17. And he says, I'll give you a young goat from flock. She said, well, why don't you give me a pledge in the meantime until you send that goat? And, what pledge do you want? She said, how about your signet, the ring, your cord, and your staff? It's in your hand. So he gave that to her, and then sent through a servant a goat later, but she's gone. Nobody knows who she is, or she's, okay, well, we move on. Then Judah gets word, oh, by the way, your daughter-in-law, she is pregnant. And so Judah's response in verse 24, and she's been immoral. Now what's interesting about that? He's just been sleeping around with a prostitute in his mind. No, she must die, right? Pregnant by immorality. He said, bring her out and let her be, what? The end of verse 24? Burned. Wow. Well, righteousness must be held up. It's going to burn her. And she was brought out. She sent word to her father-in-law, okay, hey, I understand it's got to be done, but by the way, the guy you might want to know who's, impregnated me, these things belong to him, the signet ring, cord, and the staff. Judah identified them and said, what? She is more righteous than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah. So he has this interesting, changing, significant moment for Judah to be confronted with his own sin, to be confronted with his quick judgment and quick to condemn her, his lack of fulfilling God's law with her to have a child. He has the appropriate response at this point. So she'll have the babies. But then, verse 27, when the time of labor came, there were twins in her womb. And when she was in labor, one put out his hand out of the womb, and the midwife took and tied a scarlet thread on his hand, saying, this one came out first. But he drew it back. And behold, his other brother, got him in a headlock, pulled him over, and he came out first. And drew back his hand. Behold, the brother came out. And she said, what? A breach you have made for yourself. Therefore, his name was called Perez. Afterward, his brother came out with a scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Hey, that sound familiar? Sounds a lot like Jacob and Esau, doesn't it? Twins, and one's going to come out, and but anyway, they're one of them grabbing his heel. This again, why? What's the theme here? What's the deal with? What's some themes we see in this whole event with these two? Right, that the firstborn isn't. That's just not going to work that way, right? And this also fits this common motif, doesn't it? That God is working in ways you don't expect. The younger often rules the older. That's what we're going to see with Joseph. That's what we saw, with Jacob. There is just the sense that things are upside down, and that God is working in unexpected ways. And this whole, Perez, so who's Perez's father? Right. So his grandfather? And it's a weird family tree dynamic going on here, right? Kind of shameful. But yet, where will we see Perez later? Matthew 1:3. Read it, if you would. Right? Okay, well, yeah, he's in the family line of Jesus. Right there, blatant. Perez is mentioned. That God is working through this upside down and backward and all out of kilter, convoluted story. And there's a thread. One might say a scarlet thread running through it. In fact, we could just chase a scarlet thread through, through Scripture and find some interesting references to that. But that is another time. But anyway, so now we get back to Joseph's story. And we'll pick that back up in 39. Yes, Deborah? Here, let me.
With the younger saving the older, the fact that God chooses people that weren't expected, it does showcase that it's God's choice, and in that sense, it is grace and a gift. It's part of God, the people that God saves. It is grace and a gift, and it's not based on fleshly standards where the first one born is supposed to be the one that inherits a double portion, you know, but it is God's choosing, and I think that's to some degree what is meant to be emphasized.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. All right, so let's go to Genesis 39. Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man. And he was in this house of the Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph found favor in the sight and attended him. And he made him overseer of his house, put him in charge of all that he had. From the time that he had him oversee in his house over all he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in the house and the field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge. Because of him, he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. So, whatever Joseph puts his mind to, whatever Joseph works with, good things happen. So, a person like that, you're going to raise up. And so now, or we kind of his dad's favorite, got the special gifts, high, then brothers sell him a slave. That had to be extremely traumatic. Low. Now, back up at a high place again. We're also noted here that Joseph, verse 6, was handsome in form and appearance. And so we know kind of the rest of that story. Potiphar's wife is attracted to Joseph, wants to force him to sleep with her. He resists that, flees from her, and then what does she do? Accuses him of trying to attack her. Right. And, of course, Potiphar goes with what his wife said, and he's sent back to prison. Imagine how that felt to Joseph. You did the right thing, and you suffer for it. Low point again. But things begin to look up again. Joseph, chapter 40, comes to befriend a couple of Pharaoh's employees that have fallen out of favor, the chief butler and the baker. And they both have dreams, and Joseph's going to interpret their dreams. Chapter 40, verse 12, Joseph said to the butler, "This is the interpretation. 3 branches that you dreamed about are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to office, and you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand, as formerly you did when you were his cupbearer. Only remember me when it is well with you, and please do me the kindness to mention me to Pharaoh, and so get me out of this house." So, the butler, I mean, what's his job? He's giving the king a drink, but what's his main job? He's to test it, make sure it's not poison, right? So that would be a kind of a stressful job, you might think, especially if you don't have a good king you're helping take care of. But he's supposed to test it, make sure it's not poison. So, in other words, these guys are very close to Pharaoh. They're in the inner circle. And so the baker hears that report, favorable, and what is he thinking? Yeah, I had a dream too, and I want to have a great report too. You're about to get out in a few days. So, verse 18, Joseph said to him, well, this is the interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Yeah, so far so good. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds are going to eat your flesh. Not what we were hoping for. You're the baker. But that's exactly what happens. But again, his one request of the butler was what? Go mention me to Pharaoh. That's all I ask of you. Verse 14, only remember me when it's well with you. Do me this kindness. Verse 15, for I was indeed stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should put me in the pit. He's kind of, is Joseph keeping score? Sure. I mean, he knows that all the things he did not, he didn't do anything to deserve what's been happening to him. So, if you're going to change my fortunes right here, things are going to be looking up. You're going to get out 3 days, and you're going to go be right there with Pharaoh, and when you hand him that cup, you're going to say, hey, by the way, let me tell you about a guy. Chapter 41, verse 1. After how long? 2 whole years. The butler has forgotten Joseph. How long did that take before Joseph gave up hope? A few days, yeah, he's going to get settled back in. A week, okay. A month, 2 years, yeah, that's not going to happen. Again, God works on his timing. I mean, why do you think Joseph was so confident that this was going to go out 3 days, bam, it's all going to come together? What would make him think that this is how this is going to happen? God's involved. He revealed the dream to him, right? 3 days, and it was right. And that's what happened. God's clearly involved in this. So of course he's going to free him. He's going to be right there to Pharaoh, and he's going to tell him about me. He just added the extra little bit that. And again, important to remember that sometimes maybe you're having a series of really negative things and something positive. Okay, now finally we're on the upswing. Finally, things are changing. The wind has changed, blowing in a different direction. But nope, we're right back kind of where we were. And that can be very frustrating. But then comes a day in chapter 41, and what happens? Pharaoh has a dream. He dreamed that he was standing by the Nile. And behold, there came up out of the Nile 7 cows, attractive, plump, and they fed on the reed grass. And behold, 7 other cows, ugly, thin, came up out of the Nile after them and stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. And the ugly, thin cows ate the 7 attractive, plump cows. And Pharaoh awoke. He fell asleep and had a second dream. 7 ears of grain, plump and good, were growing on one stalk. And behold, after them sprouted 7 ears, thin and blighted by the east wind. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump, full ears. And Pharaoh awoke. Behold, it was a dream. You guys, any of y'all have vivid dreams or remember your dreams? Some of you do, yeah. There's sometimes some that are like, okay, what is going on with that? Was it a bad hot dog or something last night? I mean, I don't know, or no. Usually, I think dreams are pretty revealing to me. Not that I'm getting like Pharaoh's getting, but usually something's going on in my mind and I'm wrestling with, and that's what the dream's kind of exposing somewhat. But clearly, it really moved him. John, do you hear that? Stat. Okay. Well, I can always go back to this other one if it keeps going. So, but it's disturbing, and it's very clear, and it's repetitive. I think that's also probably unusual to him. It's like these 2 dreams, and they have very similar, though different contexts. They're telling him something, again, the same thing, but from a different direction. There's something 7 that's really good, and then it is consumed by 7 that is not good. Well, he's got these guys, these, what are they called? Magicians, right? These wise guys, and dream interpreters. And he calls them in and says, okay, I've got these dreams I want you to interpret. And what do they say to him? Yeah. Right, so I've got these dreams I've had. And they say, okay, so what's your dream? I want you to tell me the dream. Yeah, what? Well, why would he do that? Well, you could just tell me anything. You can make up something. But if you can tell me the dream, I really know you know what's going on. And what's their reaction? Yeah, that's impossible. There's no way, no way that can happen, that somebody could tell you your dream and then interpret your dream. So he did, straight up? Am I getting my stories wrong? Oh, okay. All right. Then I'm getting that cross with the yeah. So that's right. So, yeah, I think that's the mix-up on that. But yeah, so he does reveal the dream, or it was Daniel. I think it was Daniel story that he said, tell me. Isn't that right, Karen? Yeah, so that's right. So he says, he goes in and he gives him the dream, and they reveal that to him. And but they can't explain that to him. So then we have, so Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, because now the butler's like, oh, hey, I just remembered there's this guy that interprets dreams, and so brings him in, sent and called Joseph, quickly brought him in. This is now verse 14 of chapter 41. Quickly brought him up out of the, what does your version say? Now, literally it says pit, which is interesting because that can make us think of like the pit he was thrown. I think it's that he was thrown into by the brothers. So there's a sense that he keeps finding himself in a pit. And brought up, they shaved him, changed his clothes, came for Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to him, I had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. I have heard it said that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph answered him, it is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. How would you describe that response? Yeah. What a great response. I can't. But God can. So Pharaoh said, behold, in my dream. And then he tells him what he dreamed about. And then Joseph said to Pharaoh, the dreams of Pharaoh are one. So you've had 2 dreams, but they're the same event. 7 good cows represent 7 years. The 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are 1. The 7 lean and ugly cows that come are the 7 years that are going to follow that, basically, right? So you're going to have 7 years of plenty, bumper crops, but that's going to be followed with 7 years of very harsh times of famine. So be ready for that. I tell you what, we'll pick up how that moves forward next time, because we can't get through all of Joseph's story here. Great. Anybody have any final comments, though, or thoughts about that? All right. Who's our...
Just review some announcements. I guess before we do that, let's not forget that we're supper to those who has opportunities. So if you need supplies, we're here. Father in heaven, we come to you and remember again that you sent your Son to this earth to die for us, forgiveness of our sins. We pray that these ones that are taking this bread this time will remember that sacrifice. Thank you that we can offer them this time. We also remember how the Son shed his blood there on the cross. We move on to remind us of that and to drink this time and take together. So that we also remember the worship today. Just review some of the announcements we mentioned today. Classics movie trip is this Wednesday the 20th. Men and women's fellowship lunches are this Thursday. And there's sign-ups from the bulletin boards for these events. Just remember Greg Edwards is recovering from hip surgery. Jason Shrimp is recovering from his surgery. And Jerry Thompson on her and so from her surgery. And so Mike Lewis is on hospice. Well, staff on this important prayer. What Nancy Barnes, yeah. Some form of cancer. He's a 10-year-old. You want to remember Nancy's great grandson. Our Father, we come to you and we want to remember these ones that are recovering from surgery, Greg Edwards, Jason Shrimp, Jerry Thompson, Vernon Dunnigan. And we pray for Mike Pace who's going through this time of sickness. And just that you strengthen him, give him encouragement. We also want to remember the great grandson, Nancy Barnes and Connor Barnes. Pray that treatments will be effective for him and he can recover from that. Pray that we know that you have power over all these things. And we just pray for your blessings and your healing and recovery in all these cases. Our Father, we pray that we will remember these lessons that we've been studying, the dealings with mankind, and realize that it's not only us, but even all through history, man has not shown a lot of wisdom or a lot of loyalty to you, commands many times. We just realize that we need to be reminded. We pray that we will continue to remember what you've done for us. Continue to remember what your Son has done for us. As we leave one